Well, hello there, good evening. Welcome to the latest of the Spitfire sessions. Tonight, we're going to focus on Kent's area of expertise. Kent County Cricket Club, undoubtedly the best. Look back through the history of the game when it comes to wicket keeping. At the moment, we've got one panellist, hoping to be joined by two more as we talk to the glovemen, three of them from Kent's history. We'll introduce the first of our panelists in just a moment. But before we get to going, can I say our continued thanks to Shepherd Neame and Spitfire as Geraint Jones joins us. Good evening, Geraint. Introduce you officially in just a moment. Our continued thanks to Spitfire, Shepherd Neame, our partners who have looked after us throughout all these Spitfire sessions. The good news is, of course, that international cricket starts in just over a day's time. England West Indies club cricket is just around the corner as well. County cricket is less than a month away now. And if the good news doesn't keep coming, here comes the really, really bit of good news. And that is that our sponsors, our partners at Shepherd Neame are expecting to have over a third of their pubs in the southeast open by the end of this month. If, however, you don't fancy a trip to the boozer right now, you can go to their online shop and look what rolled up at my house at the end of last week. Look at that. A keg of Spitfire. I'm pretending it's heavy, sort of make out I haven't had any yet, but that is in my house, and suddenly you want to come round, don't you? You can get your hands on one of those or whatever Shepherd Neame tipple you prefer by going to their online shop. Thank you for your advanced questions. Some good ones tonight. Going to try and work our way through as many as possible. We are streaming on the Zoom. We'll be on Facebook Live shortly. And you can get your questions over to us while we are chatting. As I said, tonight we're focusing on wicket keeping. We've got two of our panelists with us. Let's introduce the first. Returning for a second stint at the Spitfire sessions is Steve Marsh, who spent his entire professional career at Kent. 613 appearances, 18 years the career at Kent, over 13,000 runs, over 1,000 catches, 97 stumpings. And after Mark Benson retired in '96, Steve Marsh was captain through until 1998. Hello, Steve. Great to have you with us again. How are you?
No, pleasure to be back, Steve. Yeah, and yeah, thanks, and looking forward to this evening and chatting with the boys.
And I dug you out, didn't I, last time you were on for your technological lack of expertise, but you're on in good time. No one else. Let's introduce our second panelist, also back for a second stint on the Spitfire sessions. Recently a finalist in the poll to find Kent supporters' favourite wicketkeeper in our 150-year history. For the majority of the noughties, this man was behind the stumps of 2007 T20 Cup winner, 2005 Ashes winner with England, and also represented Papua New Guinea in international cricket. Good evening, Geraint Jones. How are you?
Evening, Steves. I'm good, thanks.
Excellent stuff. We're hoping to be joined, I'm sure we will be joined, by Niall O'Brien in the due course. As I mentioned, we have your questions sent in advance, some really good ones tonight. So let's crack on with the first of them, which came from Frank, who says, where did you first feel the desire to keep wicket, and how old were you? It's a great question. I'll start with you, Steve, on this one if I can, because I think anyone who's played cricket at any level has probably had a go at wicket keeping. I hated it. Those great big clown's gloves. I absolutely hated it. So when did you start out?
Well, it was by chance, really. I probably first put on a pair of wicket gloves probably around the age of 15 or 16, and it was purely by chance because the local club I was playing for at the time, I wasn't batting, I wasn't bowling, I was fielding, batting probably 10 or 11. And it just so happened in one game, our wicketkeeper slipped a disc whilst batting, got stretchered off, and they were looking around the dressing room to see who would fancy putting the gloves on. And I just thought I was doing nothing else, so I might as well do that. And that really is as simple as that. I managed to take 4 catches, 3 of them in the chest, but managed to claw onto them. And I kept the job there. And things probably moved on slightly more after that.
Did you realise pretty quickly that actually you had the hang of it? You were quite liked it. You were quite good at it.
No, not really. I mean, I obviously had an eye for eye-ball coordination, as every sportsman does have. And I was lucky. The club side I was playing for, Lordswood, had a guy by the name of George Baker. A lot of the guys would know George Baker, and he used to come up and watch. He played a higher standard as a wicketkeeper, and he came up one day and watched a few matches and offered me a bit of coaching. And I wanted to get better. I love my sport. I love my cricket. I love my football. And if someone at the age of 16 offered you a bit of coaching and to improve yourself, that's what I did. And with no intention of going any further than playing the best standard of club cricket I could play. Forever grateful for him for doing that.
Okay, well, look at that. Look who's joined us. It's Niall O'Brien. So we are now fully live, I believe, on Facebook Live. So you can start getting your questions over on Facebook as well. Let's briefly introduce Niall O'Brien to you, who began his domestic career with Kent in 2004. Renowned, it says here, Niall, for your competitiveness behind the stumps. I think you probably need to turn your microphone on as well. Niall scored over 9,000 first-class runs, nearly 500 first-class catches, and surely the highlight was that brilliant 72 on St Patrick's Day to help Ireland claim victory over Pakistan. It says here in the 2007 World Cup. Was it really that long ago?
That long, yeah, long old time ago. Seems like yesterday, I must say that. It was a great day, that Paddy's Day win, but the evening was even better. The nighttime celebrations probably eclipsed the victory, I must say.
I bet it was. As an Englishman, up until last year, I think I've erased pretty much all Cricket World Cups from my memory, but I remember last year. Great to have you with us, Niall. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That latest Spitfire session. Steve Marsh just answering that question from Frank about where you first felt the desire to keep wicket. How old were you, Geraint? How old were you when you first picked up the gloves?
A bit younger than Marshy. I probably, from the very first sort of moments I started playing cricket, to be honest. So I moved to Australia when I was 6 and started playing cricket not long after that, so probably 7 or 8. And it wasn't soon before I was behind the stump. So I just loved being involved and jumping around. I remember as a kid I would go in goal for penalty shootouts because that's what I wanted to be, diving around. And so keeping was a natural progression. I still thought I could bowl fast, which I couldn't, but at the same time, I got behind the sticks. I love being involved, every ball up to the spinners. So yeah, no, for me it was right from early age, to be honest.
Was that one of the things you loved about it as a wicketkeeper? You just involved all the time. I used to love standing in the slips because one would come to you. Well, maybe nothing would come to you, but I used to love that. But as a keeper, you're involved all the time. Yeah,
absolutely. That was the main part of it. Whereas fielding, you can go and stand on the boundary and you get one ball in a day. Whereas keeping, you're on it every ball. So for someone who a bit of a live wire, like running around, it was perfect for me.
And now, what about you? Why did you start keeping wickets?
I was kind of forced into it, really. I was just kind of told, right, go stand there when I was about 7 or 8. So I was playing with my older brother. So they said, listen, you can't bowl, so you go behind the stumps. And it was the same in hockey. They put me in goal in hockey, and I was the smallest ever goalkeeper in hockey. I remember getting lobbed when I was standing on the line in a game of under 15s hockey. So, I love keeping, though. Got mad into my keeping. Being the centre of attention was absolutely my world. Everyone looking at me, everyone listening to me. So I think it was a match made in heaven, really, me and wicketkeeping. Not many people around the world probably thought that, but in my eyes, I thought, this is the best job. I'm doing a great job. I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting because before you logged on, I was saying that I think most people who've played any level of cricket have probably tried keeping wicket. I did it for, I think, half a match. I absolutely hated it. And one of the things I didn't like was these great big gloves, and I felt I had no control. Has wicket keeping equipment, like all other cricket equipment, really moved on these days?
Well, actually, I was listening to Marshy, and he mentioned George Baker, a great glovesman. George Baker made some fantastic gloves. I think I may be wrong, but I think he made Jack Russell's gloves for the most of Jack Russell's career. And my first class debut was when Jonesy was in the Caribbean and they were getting flogged by Brian Lara all over the place. But my first class debut was against Gloucestershire, and Jack Russell was playing. I spent 2 days with Jack Russell sitting watching the rain. And later in that season, Jack actually retired, and I got a call from George Baker. I think George lived down kind of the Medway towns maybe. And he said to me, Nobby, Jack is retired. He's sending up 3 pairs of gloves for you. So I used Jack's gloves for about 3 or 4 years. They were the best gloves I ever had. They're brilliant, and they were old-fashioned, kind of long, heavy kind of gauntlets, I suppose you call them. Not like the gloves nowadays, but they're beautiful gloves, and I used them for as long as I could. They're fantastic gloves.
When you said he made gloves for Jack Russell throughout his career, did he have more than one pair then? I thought all his equipment was really old, Jack Russell. All patched
Probably,
up, holes in.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point.
I think we've all spent some time with George. You know, the same for me with it. You know, I remember going down to Lordswood there, and it wasn't until I put on a pair of his gloves I actually felt, right, I'm half a chance of catching with these, because, you know, I grew up in Australia with a completely different design of glove, where the short cuff, cut in at the hands. So whereas George talked about catching pocket, and I put a pair on and the ball just went in deep into your hand, and I thought, right, wow, okay, this is what I need to be wearing. And, you know, I went down there quite a bit, spent some time with him. And so, you know, in Kent, we were really lucky to have his knowledge, because he loved it. He would reface your rubbers. He would go in there. You'd take a pair that your sponsor had sent, and he'd rip them to shreds and tell you how bad they were. So for a keeper to go spend time with George, it was great, because you learnt more about the equipment you were using, whereas all before that, I just used what I was sent.
Now, a couple of days ago, we had a special session with Alan Knott. If you haven't seen it yet, I do believe it's on YouTube. You can find it there. And Steve, looking back at those pictures of the 70s with Knotty in his absolute pomp, looking at that equipment, and I'll just mention it here, these great big things on your hands. Probably, what, a pair of batsman's pads? Was that what you used?
I mean, I think they still have wicket-keeping pads, but they're totally different to what even what I used and what the guys use now. The equipment has changed, you know, across the board. Whether it's the bats, whether it's the wicket-keeping equipment, and as the guy said, I went through my whole career, I think, pretty much having one pair of gloves that George had worked in for me, and I was a great believer in the fact I didn't want too much padding. I wanted to feel the ball in the gloves. I wanted to feel as I was catching it. The gloves were there to help me if I screwed up and I caught maybe in the web, but generally I wanted to catch everything in the palm of my hand and feel it. So sometimes, you know, obviously, especially early season, pre-season, you know, you had problems with bruising of the hand, but I'd much rather have that and feel as though I'm catching the ball, rather than having too much padding in the gloves, which, you know, to me, I just didn't feel quite right.
What's that phrase we often hear about the very best wicket keepers? When you watch them keeping wicket, the ball melts into their gloves. Is that sort of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely, because it's all about the feel and the touch, and it goes across any sport. You know, it's all about the timing, and it's the timing of catching the ball. You know, there have been certain keepers around, you know, the world that have, you know, the nicknames are, you know, the sort of pots and pans, that they hit the gloves too hard, that you don't take it in properly. But you know, to me, it was all about the feel, and the gloves were obviously a mega important part of my sort of equipment. But I wanted to be in a position whereby I felt as though the ball was going in, and I knew the ball was going in properly.
All right, let's move on to another question which came in advance from Bob. This one's directed at you, Steve, to start with. For you specifically, anyway, to kick off, did you find it easier to keep wicket when you were not captaining the team, or did you enjoy that extra responsibility of captaincy?
I think initially it was a slight problem. The first year I captained the team, when Mark Benson sort of retired through injury, not only was I made captain, it was also my benefit year. So to try and get all three things working properly, was a slight issue to start with. But then you sort of put them in different compartments, and you can actually work out the fact that, you know, I was keeping wicket, and I could switch off after I've taken the ball or not taking the ball, and work out what was going to happen, you know, in the next few overs, what was going on in the game from a captaincy point of view. And in the end, I wouldn't say it improved my game, but in the end, after a few matches getting used to that whole scenario, I felt as though I was as good keeping as I was previously, but I wouldn't say I was a better keeper because I was captain. But it's one of those things. If you've got, it takes a while to get the brains sort of, working, and being able to switch on, switch off. And the guys will tell you that anyway. Keeping is all about, you're out there from 11 o'clock till 6 o'clock. You could be 400 for one, you're keeping wicket. You've got to be able to go, take one ball, switch off that next ball until the next ball in between. If you're trying to concentrate all day long, you blow your mind, you would never, ever succeed. So it wasn't as difficult as maybe people made out.
Geraint, did you ever have any spells captaining?
A little bit, yeah. Well, obviously when I went to Gloucester, I was captain down there, but I didn't have the gloves on that much. Did a little bit, but also there was a time at Kent when Treddy was captain, and I was sort of vice captain and did a bit before he arrived. So what Marshy said there, I didn't feel it made me any better. I just, I was someone who enjoyed more going on. So I had my best batting years when I was batting at 3, and then the captaincy generally comes to you a bit later when you know your game and you understand it and you've got that ability to put stuff in compartments, and that's what really helps. And as a keeper, you do that every ball. So taking on the captaincy didn't feel like much of a burden, and actually really enjoyed it to try and manipulate. I could see what the bowlers were doing. I could see how were they tired, what was going on, and on the back of that could try and put the field from what I saw that I had a great view of what the bowler was trying to do. So yeah, it all linked together really well, I felt. No,
did you find that if you had a bit more responsibility, a bit more going on as well as keeping wicket all day? Did you like that, or you keep wicket not worrying about too much else?
Not many people would use the expression Niall O'Brien and responsibility in the same sentence. So I didn't get asked too many times to captain. I captained Ireland on one occasion against Sri Lanka. We won the toss. That was my claim to fame.
Oh, you stopped there, did you? Great. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we got absolutely hammered in the match. So winning the toss, I thought that was a great achievement. But no, I was happy to do my thing, keeping and batting, and just be one of the lads and not take too much responsibility off the field, really.
Oh, a man after my own heart. Thank God.
I think a wicketkeeper in an ideal world is probably the best vice captain there is. Because as Jonesy said, you are seeing every ball. You're seeing when a bowler gets tired. You're seeing everything that goes on in the field. You would make the most perfect, or most wicketkeepers would make the perfect vice captain, and not necessarily captain. But obviously, it has happened down the years and down the line. It still will do. But that's my view.
Can I throw one at you here? Then a slight curveball to that. Alex Stewart for England, keeping wicket, may have been in the field 2 days. Then you've got to go out and open the batting. Now that is tough, is it not?
Yeah. That sometimes you can get a bit too much. I mean, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the captaincy element. It's more the fact of opening the batting and having to keep wicket. As I alluded to earlier, you could be, and especially in a test match, you could be in the field a day and a half, 600, and then you've got to go out to bat. You've got to switch off. You're mentally fatigued. That's just life. However fit you are physically, it gives you the opportunity to become sort of mentally tough, mentally strong, and mentally fit. But to then have to sort of take the pads off, take the gloves off, and then put the batting stuff on is a tough gig.
I enjoyed it. I think the opposite.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. I opened for a couple of years. I really loved it. I loved going from keeping, and my eye was in.
Yeah.
I felt I was in the rhythm of the game, so I just went out and batted. Okay. Sometimes you're in the field for a long time and you are a bit tired and you play a loose shot and you lose wicket. But generally, I had some of my best seasons. I thrived on it. Get out there you bowl the team out for 260. It's 20 overs left in the day. Go out there. You could be 40 or 50 not out. Otherwise, I was at the other end. I was batting 7, maybe 8. So I thought I might as well open the batting and try and get a good chance. So I think on the flip side, I think it was a really good opportunity for some people. And I always say to kids, if you get a chance, bat as high as you can. Otherwise, you can get stuck at. If you get stuck at 7 or 8 and you get lost a little bit.
Oh, no, I agree with that. I probably didn't explain. I mean, I agree. You're bowling out 260, but probably in a test match scenario, a day and a half.
Yeah, sure.
And then on a flat thing, where nothing's coming, you could set a barbecue up behind the stumps because nothing's thing going. To then go out.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
You should always bat as high as you possibly can. I agree with you, Nobby.
Oh, I love the thought of that. Someone flipping burgers behind the stumps. What a thought that is. Bob's kind of sent a follow-up question here, which is about standing up. When you're standing up to, well, not always that slower bowler these days. Who decides on whether you stand up or not? Is it you? Is it the bowler? Is it the skipper, Geraint? Is it a mix of all three?
Yeah, no, it's generally, well, for one, bowlers tell you if they like it or not. Surprisingly, Darren Stevens didn't particularly like me standing up that much, when especially it was swinging about. He liked me stood back. Whereas, sometimes Keezy would come up to me and be tearing his hair out and want me up to the stumps because maybe the batsman had done something and to put some pressure on. So yeah, it's a real sort of collaboration of thought, really. Whereas, and then depends on what the batsman's doing, the type of wicket. And if you're any good, if you enjoy it, if the ball's always scooting off when you miss it, I think you'll be sent back pretty quick. But I loved it. I loved getting up to the stumps. It was it was a real challenge and a different style, keeping to spinners that you kept to the seamers, a different rhythm to that, and so I love the different aspects of the job and getting up there and putting a bit of pressure on the batters. A bit different pressure that probably Marshy and Nobby put on. They're a bit more vocal than me. So as a batter standing in front of them two, it would have been an absolute nightmare.
You're a silent assassin behind the stumps, you are, Jonesy.
Hey, Steve, would you have stood up to Derek Underwood in your early part of your career?
Well, no, you had to. I mean, that was a given.
Of course.
And obviously, yes. I mean, and I would say it was purely your decision whether you stood up or stood back. Now, occasionally you had to have debates with the bowler in question because, again, as Jonesy said with Steve-O, I had the same issues with Mark Elam. There were times where I was standing up and he would categorically would not want me standing up. And at the end of the day, we had to have agree to disagree at times. I generally won, but but it has to be for good reasons. Jonesy, again mentioned the fact that it has to be for the reasons. I mean, obviously you stand up for every spinner, but the seamers and sometimes the quicks, and it happened in 4-day cricket as well as 1-day cricket. It's obviously more so in 1-day cricket because the stats would say you're going to get more catches and you're going to standing back and you're going to get standing up and stumpings. But it's not about that. It's about the pressure you're sticking on the batsman by being up to the stump. So if it needed be, I would do. There were bowlers that didn't like it, and there were bowlers that sometimes you felt you should be standing back the way they were bowling because you're going to get more nicks than a stumping or a catch standing up. So it was something that was discussed. I don't think the captain ever really came into it in my time. They left it to you and the bowler, and it was just your discussion with the bowler in question. And as I said, I won most of the time.
And Niall, did you used to get the captain involved, telling you you're standing up, whether you like it or not?
Not really. No, I didn't like that. Nobby stand up. I was like, okay, why? Give me the merits of standing up as opposed to standing up. I love standing up with the stumps, and during my Ireland career, we had a lot of medium paces. So, 77, 78, 79 mile an hour bowlers. So standing up was actually perfect because it made those bowlers 10 or 15% better as opposed to just bowling, 78 mile an hour with the keeper standing back in 1-day cricket. But I used to hate the captain. Nobby stand up. Why? Like, let's talk this through. If me and the bowler, we can come up with a bit of a plan against a certain batsman. Obviously, if he's charging down the wicket or even batting outside his crease. But it really used to infuriate me when the captain, who actually knew nothing about wicket-keeping, would just tell you what to do. And I'd be like, just go away. I'm not going to name the certain captain. I'm not going to name Keezy. I'm not going to name him. Sorry. But yeah, no, I love getting subs and having a little chirp. Maybe Sledge and KP as well. Sledge and KP or something lovely.
Oh yes, of course. I hadn't thought about that. That of course one of the key jobs of the wicketkeeper is, well, for some of you, sledging. But of course, Geraint, it sounds like from what the other two say, you were the side of the sassing. You never got too much involved in that.
Yeah, no, I took the opinion that the batsman was probably going to come back with something better than I could throw at them. So so I let everyone else do it and just enjoyed what was going on around me. And yeah, every now and again you get annoyed, and you chip in, and you know, especially if they've nicked one and you felt hasn't been given. So you give them a bit of an idea of what you think of them. But generally I was sort of a bit just focusing on what I do, and but put it out to the team. I would focus on my job as encouraging the team, but it primarily came down to the fact that I didn't think I could stand up to an argument with any of the batters. They would put me down pretty quickly, and I'd be then in my box for the rest of the match.
All right, good answer. Thank you very much. I've been asked to remind everyone who's joined us on Facebook Live and of course on Zoom that you can send your live questions over. If we have time, we shall work through them, so you know how to get your questions over on Zoom, on Facebook Live, and if there is a moment spare at the end, we shall fire them to tonight's panel. The next question, which was sent in advance by David, says that given that your hands are the tools of your trade, what extra measures do you take to protect your fingers? Which I think is quite a good question. Nobody did make any sort of provision to protect your fingers, not just while you're playing, but in life in general.
I used to use this little. I used to use this gel. I don't know if the lads. It's like a little fatty kind of gel. I used to put on my palm of my hands. But generally, I never had like loads of inners. I liked, as the boys are saying, I like to feel the ball, kind of on my hand, as it were. So I didn't like to kind of have too much padding. I see some keepers and their whole hands are padded like a boxer. But I was generally not too much. A little bit of tape. I dislocated a few fingers, so I had to sometimes tape those up. But no, I was commando. I was pretty much commando there behind the stick. So just kind of free and easy, as it were.
What a thought that is. Steve, is there any advice you could give to David? I think he's looking for some advice here about how he can look after it.
Yeah. The way I used to look after my hands, I used to insure them for £3.50, but I mean, no, not that's correct. Same as Nobby. There was this gel that I just put across the palm of my hand, of both hands, and then that was it. I mean, I had two. I was quite bizarre. I used to wear 2 inners on the right hand and 1 inner on the left hand, and the reason being I'm going to catch majority of balls in my right hand throughout the day, throughout my career. And as I said earlier, I wanted to feel the ball in the hand, so I wanted, like Nobby, as less protection as was possible without, to hurt too much. The palm, no taping, unless I was still broken, I might tape it then. But if everything else was in order, then that was all I used. And it was, to me, for some reason, it's by taping up fingers and whatever, they're not as, I don't think, as mobile, and then obviously then you're more likely to get an injury in my book.
Geraint, do you have anything to add to this advice that David's after?
I think you've got to, play around and experiment. It took me a while to come up with the feel that I liked, and and then that was it for me for the rest of my career. But I'd have a thin batting inner on first, then I'd have a keeping inner over the top, and then over the top of that I had another not padded keeping, but I'd cut the fingers off it. So, and that for me over time, that was the perfect feel that I got, because I hated any tape. I never put any tape on my fingers, even if they were hurting or anything like that, because I didn't feel I could flex them. They'd be a bit straight for me, and that was the last thing I wanted to feel, was that my fingers were pointing straight to the ball. So my advice would be, we were lucky. We were in the position where we had quite a few pairs of inners where we could probably come up with that, but experiment, have put 2 sets on, put 1 with something else. But yeah, that's what I did, and eventually I came up with the way that lasted me then the rest of my career.
And you came out of it pretty well, Geraint, didn't you? I think of tonight's panel, you're the only one I've actually shaken hands with. Remember those days? You could shake hands with people. Do you remember that? I do remember there was. Well, yeah, I don't remember being knolled and everything. I thought your hands were quite smooth, but
no, they're not. Yeah, I think that's my worst ones. My index and they don't particularly straight, but that's because I think I took a lot reverse hand and Harmon these quick boys smashed it. But oh yeah, no, they're one thing I noticed now. My fingers don't feel very strong. I think that's purely from years of being bashed. But no, they're not.
That's why I never text back. That's why I never text you back, because his thumbs are all sore. He never text you back.
You've got to get a message to text back first.
Oh,
I lost your number. A new phone.
Ditto.
Right, okay, let's move on to the next question from Bruce, who says, did the St. Lawrence Slope, the famed St. Lawrence Slope, provide any particular difficulties for you? We could throw Lords into that question as well, couldn't we, Steve? Lords, by the way, where you had that terrific performance that set that world record, didn't you?
It was indeed, yeah. I wouldn't say it had a problem. I mean, it's, if you've got whether you've got the slope at Canterbury or the slope at Lords, I mean that's not really the issue. The bigger issue for any keeper is uneven bounce of the wicket. Especially, I remember playing sort of at Northampton on quite a quick wicket, but it never bounced above sort of in between sort of ankle and knee high. So you're standing far too close than you really should be. And so everything then, any nick then is just pure reaction rather than being able to sort of see it and go with it. And the guys would know exactly what I'm talking about. I found those are more difficult wickets to keep on. And standing up was fine, but I'm talking about standing back to the quicks on those sort of wickets where you're probably standing 5 yards too close that you actually should be on that sort of pace of wicket. But St. Lawrence with the slope, no, I mean, it helps on, you got an away swinger bowling down the slope, or, they make the catches look good and easy because, you're just going with it, and they look spectacular, but you know what, they're pretty run of the mill really. And it's the other wickets that, as I say, the likes of Northampton and Derby, if you keep well up there, then you've had a good day.
No, were there any grounds in particular caused you any problems? Any sort of quirkiness? Any grounds that caused an issue or two?
Oh, I struggled at the Oval the first couple of years when I played for Kent at the Oval. We had Mohammed Sami, who was a pretty quick bowler, and I'd come from Ireland. I was like basically just a club cricketer really, and then got thrust into the first class arena with Jonesy's kind of elevation in the England side, which was fantastic for me. But I was probably playing, in all reality, playing before I was probably ready technically as a keeper. And we had Mohammed Sami, who was bowling 90 odd miles an hour, and he used to get a lot of wobble on the ball. And that was something I'd never experienced. And 2 or 3 times I remember playing the Oval, the ball's wobbling everywhere. And I just kept missing the ball. It's like not even like just kind of patting it down. The ball just going straight past me for 4 byes, all like constantly all day. And I was, oh my, this is absolutely shocking. And it was because of the Oval, the ball was carrying through at such a height and a good pace at the Oval. And I wasn't used to that, being a young lad coming through, basically playing club cricket. So I struggled at the Oval for a little bit my early days. But Canterbury, I thought, was a lovely place to keep wicket. There was good bounce, you got a good carry. You could trust the pace and bounce of the track. In a 4-day game, especially later on, there was a nice bit of spin. And you always felt like you're in the game keeping wicket because of the slope, whether it be against a seamer or maybe a spinner just using the slope to catch the outside edge. So no, St. Lawrence Ground was a top class place, a lovely place to keep wicket.
What year was that? You were keeping to Mohammed Sami at the Oval?
Well, it must be 2004. I joined in 2003, and I think it must have been 2004. I remember 2005, Sammy was bowling. He was bowling 90 plus. But Marcy mentions Northampton, and I played 6 years in Northampton. That was a tough place to keep wicket. And then Leicester, I went up to Leicester, and that ball didn't bounce above your shin. And you could be keeping to someone bowling mid to late 80s, but you're only about 10 yards back, and the nicks will come through shin high. So that was a tricky place to keep wicket.
Okay, 2004. Yeah, I was going to look up the scorecards so many buys you get through. I won't be that. I won't. Paul Farber's gave me a good bit of advice one day. Yeah, I think he was being very kind to me. He said, "Nobby, don't worry about buys. Just take the catches." I remember Paul Farbrace giving me a bit of advice once as well. We shan't repeat it here. Geraint, you've played in so many grounds around the world. Any in particular that you enjoyed or caused you an issue or two?
In Australia, I love because I grew up there, so I learnt to keep there. But the trueness of the way the ball came through, so that made it a lovely place to keep. And then each, like I say, each country had their quirkiness, the spinning grounds. South Africa, you'd think was fast, but actually fairly slow wicket. But Canterbury with a slope, it took me a little bit to get used to, just with alignment, because the slope would drag you down, the same as Lords. I remember and you had to stand in tighter to the stumps because otherwise you'd be wrong-footed. And that was once you sorted that out, it was a really nice place to keep, and you got the hang of it. But for amateurs and guys that don't come across it very much, just come in a bit tighter, because otherwise you tend to sort of start moving left when everything's on your outside edge. But Canterbury for me changed quite a bit. Probably when from Marshy when he was playing. I imagine he was a bit quicker in his era. Throughout my time at Canterbury, he got slower. We didn't see as much turn. As I remember, first of all, starting in the early 2000s, and Min would be a nightmare to keep to because the footholes were hard and quite deep, and he would fizz it in there, and the thing would really sort of rip through it. And that fizzled out through my career. It became quite a slow, low wicket, stood up. Whereas I remember early on in my career where fast bowlers, you'd be tested as a batsman, bounced, so a bowler could really bowl decent bounces, and then when it came into day 3 and 4, Min would come into it and find the footholes and the rough, whereas didn't get too many wickets, sort of from the back last 10 years of my career. That I think the wicket changed a heck of a lot over that time.
I think, Jones, you're right, because I think we, up the top of the square at Canterbury, when sort of midway through my career, they relayed the wickets, and for a year or so they were iffy, and then they became really good, quick, bouncy wickets. Slower down the bottom end of the square, but up the top, if we played there, you really got, as you say, you really got, sort of the ball, fizzing through, and even from a spinning point of view, you just, Min used to get a lot of wickets, not so much even with spin if it wasn't turning, but just the bounce and hitting the sort of the shoulder of the bat, and as you say, that probably died off across the square throughout your era.
Yeah, I think they're working hard to get it back now. From talking to a few of the guys that they have played on some good quick wickets. So so that's ultimately what you want as a cricketer, to play on something that's fast and bouncy early on, and then test you in spin. And as a keeper, you then feel in the game the whole time. Whereas during that middle period, when those wickets got a bit dogged and not much bounce and having to stand really close, wasn't hugely enjoyable.
So you've touched on there the grounds which were perhaps tricky to keep at, and what about the bowlers that were tricky to keep to? Several people have sent over a live question. Niall, do you remember anyone who you really felt, God, this is going to be a test, keeping to this guy?
Well, we obviously signed Mullaritharan, and I wasn't in the first team then, but Simon Willis, who was obviously in charge of the twos, Wilco was like, all right, Nobby, your job is to keep to Murley in the nets. Whenever he wants to bowl, he will ring you, and you just go keep wicket to him. Oh, no wonder he got 800 odd test wickets. He just bowled for 8 hours a day, Murley. And I'd have to just go down there, stand there, and try and imagine which way this ball is kind of turning. And yeah, it was impossible to read for me, Murley. And we played Sri Lanka in the 2007 World Cup, and the coach said, Nobby, okay, you talk about Murley because you play with him at Kent. I was like, lads, don't be going to me for advice against Murley. And lo and behold, I was caught behind Kos Sangakkara, ball Mullaritharan. So he was the toughest to keep to. Absolutely incredible bowler, a wizard, absolute wizard. So, but I think probably Shaminda Vas was a great keeper to, a great bowler to keep to, because just nice little swing bowler. Just used to get those lovely little nicks, like never a big flaying drive, but just a little feather. Great bowler to keep wicket to. And Martin Saggers was a lovely bowler to keep wicket to. Just good, nice pace, away swing. used to get plenty of nicks off slags. But Murley was just so hard to read. Very, very difficult to read.
Fair point, that, isn't it? If the batsman doesn't know what's coming down, I'm sure the wicketkeeper doesn't always know. Steve, last time you were on with us, I think you named Graham Dilly as someone who was really interesting to keep wicket too, at that late movement, that sort of late dip, I think you were talking about, weren't you?
Well, exactly what Nobby was saying about Mohammed Sami. That's exactly what Graham Dilly did on a lot of occasions around a lot of grounds. Not every ground, but for some reason it happened at Canterbury, it happened at Lord's, it happened at a number of grounds where, he would beat the bat, the batsman wouldn't get any touch to it, but as it's coming to you, occasionally it would hit you straight in the chest, and you get a glove on it because the late dip and swing on it. But he was probably the toughest in that regard. I didn't keep the Muralitharan, but a very, very quick story about Muralitharan. When Aravinda first joined Kent, he came pre-season training, he came into the dressing room, and this guy was 10 yards behind carrying his bags in. Mark Benson introduced Aravinda to the whole team. We went into the nets. Following day, same thing. Aravinda walks into the dressing room. This guy, his bag man, is carrying his bags into the dressing room. He says to Mark Benson, Aravinda says to Mark Benson, "Do you mind if my man has just a little bowl in the nets? Keep him, just keep him interested." So Mark Benson, "Yeah, not a problem." I've gone into bat against him, as other guys have, and I used to think I was reasonable at spin. And I was coming down the wicket with this guy, and I was missing it by 3 inches on the outside. And I'm thinking, this is an off spinner. Now, we hadn't seen the deucer or whatever. And then I kept missing. I'm thinking, my eyes are gone, shocked, completely. We then found out, we'd gone to Aravinda, who is this guy? And he'd only played a couple of Sri Lanka B or under, whatever it was. He said, his name is Matai Muralitharan. And then sort of whatever it was, 700 test wickets later, we realised actually I wasn't that bad at spin. True story. So, yeah.
Jonesy, you must have kept to it, mustn't you?
Yeah, well, that was in my first proper year in the first team, 2003, and we went from the bottom of the league up to finishing second, and that was basically down to Murley in the back second half of that. And from what I was talking about earlier on, being involved in the game, Murley was amazing for that. He, outside of the bat, inside of the bat, he made it a lot of fun, and thankfully he had about an extra 2-3 yards more than the batsman to try and work out where he was going. But so that side of it. But I, like Nobby said, he bowled and bowled, and when he first came over, I got in the nets and just got used to it, seeing what was coming down and trying to have half an idea. And so I loved keeping the Murley for sure. But that wobble that the guys are talking about was an absolute nightmare, because you'd take one in the chest and you'd look up and every single one of your teammates would be laughing and just wetting themselves. But I do remember in 2000, when I was still living in Wales, working in the pharmacy, I was travelling up on trial basically, and Marshy was stood at first slip, and I was out having a stinker, and what on earth's going on there? And he just had a bit of a chat to me, and sort of talked to me about it. And I think Marshy usually could have stepped back a bit as it was wobbling to try and give you a bit more time, and so I took that on board, tried that, but it is the worst. Anything that swings late. Amjad Khan used to be a nightmare for that for me. He would, be coming at you like a tracer bullet and then zip off to the right, and you'd look like an absolute fool, but your teammates loved it.
Yeah. I think 9 out of 10. What I used to work out is 9 out of 10 balls that did that, dipped and swung, etc., ended up on the same line. So rather than go with it all the time and you end up hitting it on the chest, I just felt as though you went with it. 9 out of 10, for some reason, ended up pretty much on the same line. Now, the one that didn't, you missed it by 3 yards. But I mean, it was one of those things. But you had to make a call on that, because sometimes it can, as Jonesy said, it can make you look complete and utter sort of novice. And no one else knows apart from the keeper and the bowler can see it probably. But most of the guys won't have it, that the ball's dipping and swinging.
Yeah, and as well, don't you, that commentators, if it's on telly, commentators are digging you out. Someone who's never had gloves on in their life is digging you out. You know that's happening. I also forgot, Jones, that you used to be a pharmacist. That quite escaped my mind. Well, you're a fireman now, aren't you?
Yeah, I never got to the elevation of a pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician, so I'd be at. You'd bring the prescription in, and it was the time when Viagra was just starting off. So it was the old boys had come in with their handwritten prescriptions, and my boss would look out, see who it was, go around the back, do him a deal. Yeah, so I was a technician.
That's brilliant.
Right.
Now,
I did not know that.
Fireman stuff now. So I was actually there's a bit of a car accident in Littlebourne this morning that I was there, but thankfully the lady involved was all okay. But I love that side of it. It's the dress, that dressing room that we probably all miss so much. For me, being in the fire service and that teamwork is a bit of the making up for missing that really. But hopefully dressing rooms. Oh no, we can't get in there from this week. Now that cricket's back, that camaraderie we'll get on the pitch is closer.
Yeah, I think we've got to get changed outside, haven't we? But I'm just thinking. So you're a fireman now. You're an Ashes winning wicket-keeper. You're a pharmacy technician. I'm virtually unemployable. You know how small I feel in your company here. Let's move on to the next question from Tony. Tony Walks, who says, what was your greatest moment behind the stumps? This is for all of you, but he wants to start with you, Geraint, here. Says, surely for you may disagree. It has to be the 2005 Ashes, one of the greatest catches of all time. Tony says he was there and still gets goosebumps every time he replays it in his mind. He doesn't have to replay it in his mind. He's on the telly every 5 minutes. But is that your greatest moment?
I know. I wish I was a pop star that got royalties like they do for when their songs are.
Yeah.
Listen, without that catch, people around the world wouldn't have a clue who, that catch definitely is what I'm remembered for, one catch. But, it wasn't a particularly difficult catch. There's some other catches in my career which, I can remember taking, which I'd rank way above that. But in terms of what that meant and everything, it was incredible to be part of it, and thankfully I held on to one.
His hand wasn't even on the bat. It shouldn't have been out.
No, that's right. It shouldn't, should it? That's right.
I would have sent it upstairs.
We didn't have all that. We didn't have that in those days, did we? There was none of that in those days. No, I think we covered it, didn't we? Really, in your intro, your greatest ever moment.
Oh, keeping wicket. Well, I had a good game, I must say, at Lords against Sri Lanka in 2009 T20 World Cup. I was keeping wicket pretty well. One of the dismissals, the big Aussie Irishman, Trent Johnson, was skipper. And Sangakkara was kind of walking down the wicket to Trent and smacking him. And he was a big kind of burly Australian, very proud. So I said, TJ, I'm going to stand up or something. He said, no, we go back. I said, no, I'm standing up. And he said, Sangakkara said, do you want to get your helmet? I said, I'll get it. There's only one ball left in the over. I'll get it at the end of the over. And he had a big boom and drive, nicked it. I took a lovely catch. And TJ was delighted with Paul Farbrace. He was assistant coach, I think, of Sri Lanka then. He said to me, I got four dismissals in the game in a T20 international. And he said, I've never seen you keep as well as you kept today. So that was probably my fondest day behind the stumps. Everything kind of went right. It was lovely.
Steve, you probably answered this when you were on a few weeks ago, but if you'd like to remind us of your greatest moment for Kent.
Well, it was obviously from a keeping perspective, 8 catches at the time, which, sort of equaled the world record. But 7 of those 8, my daughter would have taken, it was one of the, they were thin nicks, easy, all in the day's work. All the guys would have got probably 8 out of 8, There was one half decent catch, but that just happened to be, everything went right on that day. But probably sometimes, and the guys would probably back me up, only when you've had a good day. Sometimes when the wickets, it goes in nicely and the ball's swinging and they get big nicks, you'll take one-handed catches going across. But actually, you know what? They're not that difficult. Jonesy said that. The catch he took wasn't that difficult because you're going that way and you're expected to catch them. The ones, I had a day once at Gloucester where, again, they were probably 330 for one, with about 5 minutes left. Not a lot came through. And I remember Bill Atty nicking one at 26 minutes past 6. We were going off for a beer after in 4 minutes time. And it wasn't the most difficult catch. It was a two-handed catch, just going in, going probably almost across first slip, but not quite, and I walk off and think, you know what, that is a very, very good catch. But none of the guys, they would applaud me for other catches, but that one is just like, all right, finish the day now, off we go. They didn't realise the concentration levels that you have to have for the whole day. Every ball, not at 25 minutes past 6, not at 27 minutes past 6, all the way through to the end. And that's what happened. And to me, that gave me more pleasure than, of course, obviously the 8 catches, because you get, the limelight, 15 minutes of fame and all that. But, for me, that was one of my better days and better catches.
That's why I used to like standing in the slips, you see. You just stand and have a chat with your mates. Maybe one will come to you, cup of tea, get off for a bit of lunch. I loved it. Keeping it far too hard at work. Going to move on to the star question in just a moment. I'm going to slip this one in quickly before we do, which is coming from Martin about Kent's obviously very proud history when it comes to wicket keepers. Who of Kent's past keepers had the greatest influence on your career and the way you kept wicket? Obviously for you, Niall O'Brien, it was Geraint Jones.
Yeah, of course, Jonesy. Yeah, no. I loved. I saw a lot of old footage actually of Alan Knott. To be fair, my dad was a cricket player. My dad captain Ireland, so we watched loads of old footage. And back in Ireland, we used to get the BBC. So that was my summer spent watching BBC and a lot of archive cricket. So I actually saw a lot of Alan Knott's keeping, kind of second hand really. So. I was a big fan of Alan Knott, and I knew the importance of wicketkeeping when I joined Kent. I knew there was a big history and such a proud tradition. For a young lad coming over from Ireland, who was a bit of a novice keeper, really, it was kind of finding it out as it went along. I knew there was a lot of pressure, especially when Jonesy got elevated to England, and I was into the first team under David Fulton's leadership. It was a huge moment to be keeping wicket for Kent. I would say, bigger than keeping for any other county in England, really keeping for Kent, because the members in the stand, they knew wicket keeping. All the old boys, they knew if you were a good keeper or not, and they weren't shy of letting you know. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, you won't get past the Kent members. No way.
Brilliant people. I must say, they're wonderful. The best members they are.
Absolutely. Still got the same seats, some of them. Steve, not just mentioned it there. Did you ever feel any pressure because of the long history of these world-class wicketkeepers that Kent had? And if you want to throw into the mix there as well, when you were starting out, Kent had that golden era of the 1970s as well.
Yeah, I mean, Notty obviously was probably... My involvement in cricket was obviously late at the later stage. So my interest in Kent cricket probably wasn't until... probably the sort of 70s, mid-70s anyway. And so Alan Knott was there. Alan Knott was a legend. I then had that unenviable task of actually taking over from Notty in '86. And I remember getting interviewed on numerous occasions by different sort of publications, saying, what's it like to take over from Alan Knott? Well, if I thought about that, then it would just blow my mind and I would fail. So, all I could say was, I'm going to do what I do. And if that's good enough, then I'll be around. If it's not good enough, then they'll find someone else. But to try and emulate or copy Notty, no one could. So, he was a legend. I learned a few things off him. Obviously, he was there in the dressing room for 3 or 4 years when I first joined the staff. And any time that I wanted any info off him, he would be, forthcoming. But I decided, what I had to do personally was do it my way. I had to do it my way because if I tried to copy Alan Knott, I was going to fail miserably. And fortunately, it worked out in the way I kept wicket and played my game.
Yeah, it can be a thankless task, can't it, that, following on from one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest. Geraint, when you were still in the pharmacy dishing out pills to old men, who was an influence on your career?
Well, obviously, growing up in Australia, it was, heavily influenced by Ian Healy, watching him keep to Kane Warne. And then obviously Gilchrist started to take over. But I do remember Jack Russell, he took a leg side stumping to get Dean Jones out of the whacker off Gladstone Small. And so I knew that there was this aura about English keepers and did it a bit differently, a bit quirky. But it wasn't until I came over and really sort of got to see more county cricket on TV and then sort of started to get an understanding of the different styles. And so for me, Marshy was just talking about doing it your own way. I had to really work hard on that because I'd grown up keeping an Australian way, which I'm sure, for those who can picture it, it's, footwork, long, big catching, and you can't do that in England, with the wobble and stuff. So I had to really manufacture my own sort of way of in between because it was so ingrained the way I did it. But, when I was introduced to Kent, I remember the second team coach at the time, Chris Stone, sat us all down in the dressing room, put on the video about Kent's history, and so straight away got a knowledge and understanding that. I was coming in at a bit of a transition time, so towards the back end of Marshy's year, so I knew that Kent were looking for their next keeper. Paul Nixon had been signed, so I knew that keeping in Kent was a real dynasty and huge amount of importance on. So to be able to then go and get that place and spend an incredible career and there'll be no stands named after me, but to join those names who've been associated is pretty special, and to grace those. And I've really enjoyed there's been some stuff on social media about Notties, some discipline said recently, and some of the stuff that man could do was amazing. And I got to work a bit with Jack Russell at England level, and obviously Jack and Notty worked quite closely together. Jack idolised him, and so I got an understanding of how they kept and the different ways that they went about it compared to what I learnt and then had to try and adapt to part of.
I'll tell you what I'll do then. When we get going again, I will name the announcer's chair the Geraint Jones chair. It'll be a pleasure to sit on you every match day, I can tell you that. Now we're going to move on to the start. Oh, I should say, by the way, the man who keeps coming up, quite rightly, Alan Knott. Don't forget, we did that special with him last week. He spoke to Chris Cowdrey, I believe, was rather posh, and that is available for you to watch on YouTube. If you haven't seen it yet, go and check it out. If you have seen it, watch it again. You can't hear from anyone finer than Alan Knott. Thank you very much to Keith, who sent in the star question selected by our panel here. Wins a prize courtesy of Spitfire, our sponsors. Don't forget, you can get to the Shepherd Neame shop and get yourself one of these. All the pubs, or a lot of them anyway, should be open by the end of July. But if you don't fancy going, you can have some kegs sent to your house. Go to the Shepherd Neame online shop. Keith's question: what's the best piece of advice relating to keeping that you were ever given and that you could now pass on to Sam Billings, to Ollie Robinson, to Jordan Cox? Steve, you're the man who selected this question, I think.
I was the only one here at the time.
You were, that's quite right. You were quite. Anything you could listen? I'm sure you don't want to tell those guys how to do it, but what would you like to pass on to anyone, I suppose?
Well, the only thing I would say is whatever you do, whatever sport you play, and wicketkeeping is just one element of of a game of cricket. And the things I used to make sure that I did, I got myself. You've got to be a mentally fit guy to keep wicket, and to be mentally fit, you've got to be physically fit so that you can concentrate. As I said earlier, to be able to concentrate every ball, to be able to switch off but concentrate every ball, and that's a major part of it. And the other thing I would say is that you're only as whether you take a great catch, whether you drop a dolly, you're only as good as the next ball you take. And it's very difficult, and sometimes it's tough to drop a guy, and we all do it, but to be able to put that right out, that is history. That's in Wisdom as a drop catch. It's only what you do next. And sometimes it's very difficult, guys. You see guys, whether, as keepers, as batsmen or whatever, they hold on to it too long. And as I say, whether you take a great catch, because the next one can come, you could drop it, but you have to really sort of break it down ball by ball. And that's what I'd say. Every ball is a contest, and you've got to win more contests than you lose. That would be my advice.
Sage advice that is as well. Geraint, what would you pass on to the up and coming ones?
They're a good bunch, so to be fair, I think they're probably better.
Yeah.
I immersed myself in preparation. That's what I covered off. Getting ready for matches, and in each morning I'd I'd think ahead what was going on that day, and then mentally get myself ready. So if early on, if it was min, I'm got to get ready for a day of min, and they've got a certain amount of left-handers. Right, let's make sure I've ticked that box. So when I walk out there, it's not a surprise. I've covered it. I'm ready for it. And the other reason I sort of did that morning's preparation and all the stuff before was to try and get a rhythm as quick as I could. So that was my focus on early on. The first 2-3 overs was getting myself a rhythm and setting myself up for the day. And so that's what I look to do, because once I felt that rhythm, all the work I'd done, then it become natural. I'd relax a lot more, and it would just become part of the day, and it would flow. Whereas until I felt that rhythm, I was fighting myself a bit. But once that came, keeping becomes really enjoyable. But yeah, so my preparation is where I sort of relaxed my mind a bit, enabling me to do it when I got out in the middle.
And now, how big were you on the preparation front ahead of a day? Were you expecting to be in the field all day?
Yeah, I'll prepare accordingly. But the big thing for me, it was a very simple bit of advice, but something I never really thought about. When keeping to a spinner, especially an off spinner to a right-hander or a left arm spinner to a lefty, was always to kind of catch the edge, envisage the edge. And I never really thought about that as a young lad, because I never really got much wicket keeping coaching as a youngster. And I think it's still a skill that's neglected in a lot of environments. It's almost an afterthought growing up, or you're keeping wicket and you get hit a few catches. But I remember someone telling me, "Nobody expect the edge, so catch the edge." I think it might have even been Jack Russell after he retired. So as opposed to just kind of expecting the ball, and getting yourself in position. You often see young keepers, they get kind of hidden behind the batsman or hidden behind the bat, just staying outside a little bit. Just make sure you expect the edge. So pretty simple bit of advice, but it was something that really kind of helped me in my career, especially as I didn't have that much kind of keeping coaching growing up through the system. I was kind of like, right, there's your gloves, go stand behind there, make a bit of a racket, and don't drop any.
He did that well.
Yeah. Which one of those skills would you say you really nailed, Noel?
Chit chat. I call it chit chat.
I think that's where it's changed so much now, is that, especially for the upper level guys at the international and probably more at county level, is you've got someone there to help you out and to potentially help you guide yourself to your technique and help you discover that earlier. And that was towards just after I'd finished with England, that they brought in a full-time keeping coach, and and then you saw the difference it made to Matt Pryor. James Bairstow was really taking that on. So I looked at that and thought I would have loved to have that in my career, where someone dedicated to me to really bounce ideas off and help me elevate. Because like Nobby said, that you'd have someone random hit you some balls of a morning, and that was it. That was your preparation. I remember in South Africa, Dean Conway, who was a physio for quite a while, big burly lad, Welshman. He was a physio. He was hitting me balls in the morning. I caught one in about 20, and I thought, thank you. Because that was a preparation level. Whereas now, youngsters coming through, and we're lucky at international level, but at club level, finding that someone who's willing to hit you those balls is crucial, really.
But also, Jonesy, I think just to, so if I'm butting again, especially if you're going through a rough time, you've got someone there that has that knowledge or whatever, which they have now across, pretty much across the board. You are having to sort out your own issues and your problems. It's great when it's going well. You don't need anyone. You've got yourself and you're on a high. It's when the little things are going wrong and you've got to analyse your own game where no one else really can, apart from maybe a good mate that maybe sees what's maybe going on. And I think that's that's one of the good differences which has helped. I mean, as Jonesy said, if we'd have had that back in the day, that'd have taken a lot of stress and sort of soul searching of what you actually, why am I doing this? God, 2 weeks ago it was all going fine.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's tough to work it out yourself. You do eventually, but you know, I think it's great what they've got nowadays, and you can only help the game.
And that, gentlemen, is the sound of the final whistle. Thank you very much. It's been a fantastic session tonight, all in the art of wicket keeping. Thank you, Keith, for your advanced question, which was selected as the star question. And you're going to get one of these. I'm not sure you get one of these, but you'll get a prize from Shep and Neves Spitfire, our terrific partners who've looked after us throughout all of these Spitfire sessions. Thank you, Geraint Jones, for joining us once again. I cannot wait for the season to start and name that chair after you. Thank you very much. And Steve Marsh, thank you too for your second stint on the Spitfire sessions this evening.
Pleasure.
And Niall O'Brien, who looks like he's sitting in the world's biggest armchair. Thank you very much. What is that you are sitting on?
It's my bed. I'm in temporary. I'm homeless at the moment. I'm in temporary accommodation. This is my bedroom at the moment. I've been kicked out of my house. Renovation's gone horribly wrong. Soon to move in with my mother-in-law. So you know, pray for me. Pray for me, Kent. Pray for me, Kent.
It's usually the other way. Usually people don't want to move. The mother-in-law does not want Nobby moving in with her. That's
correct. Correct.
There's no point praying. All hope is lost. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I've gone numb, and it's not a good feeling. So we're gonna end here. Thank you for joining us on a Spitfire session, and don't forget to check out that Alan Knott special if you haven't seen it yet. And we'll see you again soon. Keep your eyes on Kent's website and the social media channels for more details.